It usually starts small, a twinge, a headache that hangs around longer than expected, a little numbness in a hand after sleeping wrong, nothing dramatic, just enough to notice. Then the phone comes out, not from panic yet, but that's why phones are used now. 3 clicks later, the tone has shifted. The language escalates. What began as mild discomfort becomes a serious condition. By the 4th result, advice turns urgent. This is where curiosity becomes unease, not because your body changed, but because the framing did. This didn't work this way before. When something felt off, you waited, called a nurse line, or mentioned it later. Time passed. Context accumulated. Now the path from sensation to conclusion is frictionless, and that speed quietly changes how the mind fills gaps. The key thing to understand is that Google isn't evaluating symptoms. It's ranking pages. Rankings reward attention. Dramatic possibilities outperform boring ones. Rare explanations outperform common causes. Certainty beats nuance. That's how results rise, regardless of likelihood or personal context. So when you type something vague like tingly arm, the system doesn't know your age, stress, or sleep. It knows which links held attention. Pages saying it's probably nothing underperform compared to warnings that suggest danger and demand immediate concern. That isn't malice, it's math. Health content is vulnerable because fear sticks. People linger on scary pages, open tabs, compare worst cases. Those behaviors signal success. The algorithm learns quickly that anxiety keeps people engaged, and engagement is the metric optimized. Symptom checker tools add another layer. They look official and structured. They ask questions and generate lists, but they're built to avoid liability, not calm nerves. Overestimating risk is safer than reassurance, so alarming outcomes are favored by design. The result becomes a loop. Mild symptoms trigger alarming language. Alarming language triggers more searching. More searching produces more extreme results. Soon, you're no longer evaluating how you feel. You're reacting to what the screen suggests instead. This is where pressure sneaks in, not from your body, but from implication. That staying calm is negligence. That waiting is irresponsible. That every ache is a test you're failing by not acting immediately, according to search results alone. Understanding this mechanism restores proportion. Search results aren't diagnoses, they're popularity contests among pages. Loud voices rise first, not likely explanations. Knowing that shifts the emotional weight and puts distance between sensation and interpretation. This doesn't mean ignoring symptoms. It means noticing when the machine takes over the narrative, when tone turns theatrical, when the goal shifts from helping you understand to keeping you clicking, scrolling, and escalating concern without new information. The next step isn't more searching, it's stepping back and asking what the system rewards. Once you see that clearly, panic loosens its grip, calm returns, and from there, decisions get grounded again, which is where we'll pick up next. Once you understand that search results aren't neutral, the behavior starts to make sense. Google isn't trying to diagnose anyone, it's ranking pages. The signals are blunt. Clicks, time spent reading, and how recently something appeared. None of that measures accuracy, it measures attention. Health searches are especially vulnerable because attention spikes when fear shows up. A calm headline about tension, headaches doesn't hold readers. A warning that says, "Don't ignore this sign," keeps people scrolling, clicking, and opening tabs. From the system's perspective, that page performed better, so it rises. That's why common symptoms produce dramatic results. The algorithm doesn't know sleep, stress, age, or lunch. It only knows what others clicked after typing similar words. Historically, people click the scary explanations. The system learns that pattern and repeats it without context or restraint. Freshness adds another push. Medical guidance rarely changes quickly, but headlines do. New posts get favored if they generate engagement. A recent blog with urgency can outrank a steady medical explanation that hasn't changed in years, simply because it didn't need to chase clicks. Symptom checker tools add a second layer. They look official and structured. They ask questions, run calculations, and produce lists that feel clinical, but they're built to avoid missing rare, serious cases. From a liability view, overestimating risk is safer than reassurance. That design choice shapes the outcome. These tools lean toward worst-case scenarios. They flag unlikely conditions because missing them carries more risk than alarming someone unnecessarily. What reads back feels like a disaster menu, not a probability estimate grounded in everyday reality. Combine that with search rankings and you get amplification. A mild symptom meets alarming language. Alarming language leads to more searching. More searching surfaces more extreme content. Soon, attention shifts away from the body and toward the internet's emotional temperature instead. This is where pressure enters, not medical pressure, but social implication. Calm starts to look negligent. Waiting feels irresponsible. Every ache becomes a test you're failing by not escalating fast enough. None of that comes from a clinician. It comes from framing and repetition. The reset starts with understanding what results actually represent. They aren't conclusions. They're a popularity contest among pages competing for attention. Loud voices rise first. Confident tones outrank careful ones. Clickable beats cautious, even when accuracy quietly suffers. With that in mind, add a filter. Start with the source. In the United States, favor Gov, Edu, and established org medical sites. They're slower, less dramatic, and often boring. That steadiness is usually a sign of proportion, not indifference. Then check the date. Health information doesn't expire overnight, but panic headlines recycle constantly. New doesn't mean better, it just means recent. Confirm across 2 or 3 serious medical sources. Agreement in tone matters more than dramatic certainty from one voice. Finally, know when to close the tab. More searching rarely brings clarity, it brings escalation. This isn't about ignoring symptoms. It's about not handing emotional control to an engagement machine. That space between sensation and story is where reasonable decisions live. By the time you understand how this machine actually works, something settles down, not the internet, you. The results don't suddenly become kinder or more accurate, but they stop feeling like a verdict. You see them as rankings of attention, not diagnoses, and that distinction quietly reduces their power over you. A scary headline stops sounding like a medical conclusion and starts sounding like a performance. A symptom checker result stops feeling like fate and more like a legal disclaimer wrapped in authority. You don't need to argue with it. You just don't need to absorb it, and that alone lowers the temperature noticeably. What's been quietly exhausting isn't the information itself. It's the pressure that rides alongside it. Not pressure from doctors, but pressure from implication. Waiting looks negligent. Calm looks like denial. Everyone else seems already worried and acting, and none of that is said directly. It's baked into tone and urgency. Over time, that framing trains you to mistrust your own ability to sit with uncertainty. That's a social effect, not a medical one. Bodies don't escalate because of headlines, but attention systems do. They reward intensity, certainty, and fear, because fear keeps people engaged and clicking longer than calm explanations ever do. Once you see that, you stop personalizing the output. The loudest result isn't the most likely one, It's simply the one that performed best. Orientation comes back. Search results aren't instructions. They're signals about what the system rewards, and reading them that way isn't cynical. It's basic literacy for modern screens. So you put a few simple guardrails back in place. You don't ban yourself from searching, you narrow the lane. In the US, that means government sites, medical schools, and established nonprofit organizations. They're slower, less polished, and less urgent because they don't need to win attention to survive. That steadiness is usually a sign of proportion, not indifference. You check the date, but you don't worship it. Medical understanding doesn't reset every week. Some explanations stay accurate for years because nothing changed. Panic headlines recycle constantly, and new often just means repackaged with sharper language. Next, you look for agreement instead of drama. 2 or 3 serious sources saying roughly the same thing in a calm tone matter more than one site sounding absolutely certain and alarmed. Medicine is careful by nature. Excess confidence should slow you down, not reassure you when stakes feel personal. Then there's the part people rarely talk about, knowing when to stop. More searching rarely brings clarity, it brings escalation. Closing the tab is a skill now, not because you're ignoring reality, but because you're choosing not to hand emotional control to an engagement machine built for intensity. There's also an identity shift tucked inside this. You stop feeling behind or naive for not chasing every warning. You've lived through enough systems to recognize patterns. Dial-up, pop-ups, virus scares, ITWO 1000. This is another version of the same thing, just cleaner, faster, and quieter. Old dogs don't sprint after trends. They walk alongside them, paying attention without getting dragged. You're still learning, still adjusting, still capable of laughing when the machine overreaches, because you recognize exaggeration when you see it and don't mistake volume for authority anymore. And once you see it that way, the panic loosens its grip, not because nothing ever goes wrong, but because you know where judgment actually lives. The space between sensation and story gets wider, and that's usually enough room to think clearly before reacting at all.